Welcome, my AppSec brothers and sisters. This is the first video in a series that will be bringing you tips and tricks to create and sustain a highly successful application security program. Now, this series is vendor agnostic, focusing on advice that can be used regardless of your tool set. In fact, much of the information in this series will be valuable for almost any IT program. Shout out to friend and colleague Daryl James for contributing elements to this framework. My name is Chris Miller, and I've been in the IT game for quite some time. I have a passion for paying forward the things I've learned in my career, and I've created this channel to reach a much wider audience than the stakeholders in my immediate circle. The purposes of this video series is to provide a framework to build and maintain a highly performing application security program, provide a list of key characteristics indicative of success. Now, the components of this framework will be explored in further detail in future videos. Our learning objectives for today? Well, we want to learn a little bit about why application security programs fail. I want to talk about a holistic programmatic approach to your program and describe the habits framework that I've developed, including some of the methods. We're going to also provide an introductory tour to each of the habits and the characteristics which demonstrate success within those habits. Let's take just a moment to ensure alignment of terminology. What exactly is a program? Well, in this application, it's a never-ending project, a living operational construct. It should have a charter with defined RACI and very high-level objectives that support the organizational policy. Generally, it will have interdependencies with other operational elements and potentially other programs. But why do most application security programs fail? Well, at the root cause of nearly everything is going to be insufficient sponsorship and governance. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but contributing could be insufficient expertise among the developers or other stakeholders within the program, inefficient or unsustainable practices, ineffective tooling, failing to serve all stakeholders, and most of all, an inability to sustain the necessary energy to keep the program healthy, moving along, and reducing risk. So think of your AppSec program like an onion. At the center, you have your scanning and testing activities, which are identifying flaws and vulnerabilities in your environment. The next layer is enablement for all stakeholders, but most especially for developers in both tooling and secure coding techniques. Surrounding this is remediation, actually fixing the findings to reduce your organizational risk, because without this, you're bringing no value to your organization. Governance, risk, and compliance activities are the next layer. And finally, encompassing all of these elements, you need to have a structured, programmatic approach to bring it all together. Just a quick note on my recommendations for methods. You could use a questionnaire with hundreds of questions and subjective ratings. This is not my preference because I find it very difficult to get an actionable remediation plan without a pretty huge lift. BSIM and CMMI come to mind as past traumatic experiences using this type of method. My preference is to define what good, great looks like, define the gap between your current and that great target state, and then to prioritize your activities in alignment with your organizational goals. Now, this doesn't necessarily make things easy, but at least you can begin to action in a somewhat agile fashion. Now, the remainder of this video will provide a list of characteristics organized within the 7 habits that I've designed. And the framework, unfortunately, is pretty massive. So in order to keep this video of a consumable length, I can't dive deeply into each of the sub-elements on there. However, I will be producing a series of videos with the deeper content in the coming weeks and months. So let's get started. First habit is building a powerful program foundation. Habit 2 is about deep developer engagement practices. Habit 3, having aligned policy and compliance. Habit 4 is effective risk management practices. Habit 5 is having a meaningful automation and integration strategy. Habit 6 is having a comprehensive application assessment. And finally, habit 7 is a healthy programmatic practice. Now, as we go through the characteristics, don't get too hung up on which characteristics fall into which habits. Some could be argued to belong elsewhere or even belong to more than one habit. The importance is that the characteristics all form part of this larger, cohesive programmatic approach. So, of what does a powerful program consist? Well, certainly establishing a robust governance with clearly understood and working RACI. Having executive visibility and participation, as well as common goals between all stakeholders. Certainly, an accurate application inventory is crucial. And you do need to periodically measure what you're accomplishing and make adjustments within the program. Without a solid foundation, your program is very likely to miss achieving your organization's goals. Our next habit is deep developer engagement practices. Without engaged developers, your program will fail, and this is the most important stakeholder group to satisfy within your program. How do we achieve this? First of all, we need to establish an effective liaison between development teams and information security. It should take the form of both formal and informal channels, and once established, must be nurtured. We need to provide on-demand experts to the developer population. Now, this could be internally or externally sourced, depending on what your organization prefers, but we need to provide an easy button for when there are challenges to your developers. We need to help the developers develop competency in secure coding techniques. It really isn't fair to ask them to provide secure code if you haven't trained them on how to do so. Similarly, we need to provide training in using any new tools that are being introduced. We do, however, want to provide the maximum possible work in the core developer tools because that's where they live and breathe, and that's where they'll be most content to participate. You need to provide low friction processes with the minimum number of boxes in the workflow. And then all of this is wrapping together to really build a security inclusive development culture, because this will allow you to stop introducing new flaws and vulnerabilities and provide you with the capacity to go back and chase maybe some of the things that exist from history. Do not overlook the criticality of keeping your developers happy. Habit 3 is align policy and compliance. You must align your program to your organizational policy and compliance needs. To do so, you need to start off with establishing and practicing formal policies and governance within your program. The policies should be aligned to the true risk tolerance of your organization. Similarly, there should be vertical alignment between these policies and your standards, guidelines, and procedures. It goes without saying that your organizational practice must also align to this established governance. You should have an application inventory subdivided into appropriate risk profiles aligning to business needs. And lastly, there does need to be a periodic review of formal policies, standards, guidelines, configurations, and architectural patterns. With the likely high volume of findings for application security, you must have efficient risk management practices. And this is what Habit 4 is all about. To start with, the practice needs to be aligned to your business needs. You should always apply cost-benefit principles to all of your process design. Make exceptions exceptional. Don't be an exception approval factory. Avoid over-reliance on compensating controls, as these can be overstated and leave you very vulnerable to attack. Avoid resource throttling of remediation. You should be aiming for compliance to your organizational goals, not setting a certain number of developers to work the remediation path. Avoid building remediation-only development teams, as there is no incentive for your core developers to stop producing unsecure code. Enforce defined security gates in your SDLC. Translate the impact for your GRC team and executives. They don't understand AppSec like you do, and they can't manage the volume of data in any case. Finally, treat second and third party risk as you would first party risk. Someone needs to be accountable for this code. At the speed of today's business, you simply can't have a preponderance of manual processes. And this is where Habit 5 comes into play, automation and integration. We need to integrate application security scanning and results into your accepted tool sets. You need to consider all stakeholders and what you can bring them as far as value within the program. You need to automate low-value tasks for efficiency and cost savings. And you should be leveraging templates aligned to your architectural patterns, especially in CI/CD and repository scanning. You need to ensure the integrity of these integrated systems so your program controls cannot be bypassed. Habit 6 is comprehensive application assessment. Now, this is really just a fancy way to say don't rely on a single testing method, as each has its limitations. So really leverage a comprehensive set of scanning technology and methods. Static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, software composition analysis, manual penetration testing. These all really do work together and will help you to secure the entire SDLC, as each has its strengths and weaknesses. You want to choose tools with actionable results and make sure you're managing the entire attack surface. Don't neglect down the stack. Web services, database security, vulnerabilities at the network layer can all compromise your application layer. And I do want to make a quick note about artificial intelligence. As I record this, it's the tail end of 2023, and you can't look anywhere without hearing about AI, artificial intelligence. Now, in the realm of application security, this is definitely a coming thing. The one caution I'll give you at this point is be careful to trust on tools that rely on the internet as the database for application security techniques and whatnot. There's just too much garbage out there. So I'll probably produce a video in the not too distant future, specifically speaking in depth to AI. But for now, I'd say use caution. Finally, you'll need to operationalize every aspect of your AppSec program by establishing healthy and sustainable practices that can weather changing business conditions, changing technology, and certainly changing personnel. To achieve this, Habit 7 includes designing and building software on a foundation of secure principles, adopting DevSecOps principles as a foundation of your practice. Your program must serve all stakeholders to ensure continued alignment. You need to apply accelerated change methods to help ease cultural change within your organization. Provide robust and relevant analytics and benchmarking to all stakeholders. You need to buy and build comprehensive threat insight to ensure that you're up to date on current threats and threat actors. Ensure that outsourced development has contractual recourse to ensure that secure components are being provided. And lastly, repeatedly remarket your program, as your top leadership may not notice the success due to the absence of actual incidents and even breaches. I hope you found this presentation useful. Please like and subscribe to the channel to ensure that you don't miss new content, which is going to dive into greater detail on all of these topics. Have a great day and keep the bad guys away.